Today is Thursday, February 26, 2026. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Dan Antros. The search for Nancy Guthrie continues. We'll have that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating. You can email us your thoughts as well. quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. Glad you're here with us, getting through the news of the day. We're here each and every weekday, bright and early, doing just that. With me today, CBN's Billy Hallowell. Billy, on the focus story, you're looking at this San Francisco Teachers Union that sent a strange message to parents.
Yeah, it was an interesting mess, sparking quite a bit of debate, and it surrounds homeschooling and homework. So we'll get into some of that.
All right, details on that coming up in a moment. Also on the main thing, a small New England tradition takes on a massive Middle East conflict as Vermont towns weigh a, quote, apartheid-free pledge targeting Israel. All that's coming up on the main thing. All right, I want to tell you about our sponsor of the Quick Start podcast, Christian Solidarity International. We've been talking about them, and by now you know that they are boots on the ground, where we are often so far away that our only option is to pray for them, and that is a strong option. But with Christian Solidarity International, you can provide tangible, physical, immediate needs for persecuted Christians around the world. What CSI is doing is phenomenal. They are building relationships with pastors and other Christian leaders around the world in some of the most vulnerable areas for Christians, and they're walking alongside these leaders for the long haul. They are there providing practical help and immediate emergency help, food, shelter, those sorts of things, as a lot of these persecuted Christians have been displaced from their homes, abused violently, all kinds of horrific things. But CSI is there, and if you feel led or called to stand with these believers who are suffering for the name of Jesus, go to csi-usa.org. Any amount can help. CSI-USA.org. All right, we're going to go to the news in 90 seconds now. And authorities have swarmed the Tucson home of Nancy Guthrie yesterday, nearly 4 weeks after the 84-year-old vanished, with what appeared to be FBI agents and investigators spending a few hours inside and outside the property. Neighbors report seeing suspicious activity in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, including a young man who was lingering near the intersection leading to her home. Someone, they say, just didn't fit. Surveillance footage previously released shows a masked suspect near Nancy's front door, possibly returning more than once before she was taken. Savannah Guthrie, meanwhile, announced a $1 million family-funded reward this week, saying every moment has been agony, but that her family still believes in hope, even as investigators caution the case has hit several dead ends. And a dozen F-22 Raptor fighter jets have arrived at an Israeli airbase, signaling a serious show of force as tensions with Iran continue to climb. The Raptors, widely considered among the most capable air superiority jets in the world, were previously stationed at the RAF Lakenheath in England and were deployed amid a broader U.S. military buildup across the Middle East. Those are just some of today's top headlines. You can check out more stories over at cbnnews.com. Billy, this is the Nancy Guthrie story. It's just so sad. It seems to have hit a dead end. And for all of you who have been praying for the Guthrie family, keep doing so. At the very least, if they can get closure as to what happened, because the mystery of it all has to be, as Savannah said, just agony.
Yeah, also terrifying. I mean,
yeah, because you don't know why. Yeah,
the motive. Right. It's like, when you have a public figure like that, family, and I'm not saying that's why, but you have to wonder, right? So there's so many just factors in this that are very sad to watch unfold, obviously outside of the human nature piece of this, that a loving mother is missing. And yeah, it's just horrific. You got to hope that somebody out there somewhere has information that at some point, that's what we really need to be praying for. And these poor investigators who have a lot of scrutiny on them from around the world, it's got to be intense for them.
Yeah, it really does. So keep praying there for everyone involved and that this case gets resolved sooner than later. All right, we are going to go to the focus story now. And San Francisco's teachers union recently sent a really strange message to parents. So tell me about this.
Yeah, this is interesting. So for the first time in nearly 50 years, the teachers union is on strike. They apparently emailed parents urging them to avoid homeschooling their kids or providing at-home learning. This is the allegation that this email contained that. And essentially the fear was that if the parents engaged in this homeschooling, and when I say homeschooling, they gave a packet, the district, for students to work on at home while they're not in school, that by letting them do that, it would apparently weaken the union's negotiating position. I think the union was arguing that for some reason, this was a way for the district to still sort of get funding as though they were still instructing the kids, even if they actually weren't. So they were going back and forth over this, but kind of interesting to have a teachers union, purportedly message out and say, hey, don't do any work at home while we're on strike.
Why did some experts believe that this is something out of the norm that needs to be kind of noted?
Yeah, so CBN News talked with Erica Donald. She's chair of education opportunity at the America First Policy Institute. She basically said the United Educators of San Francisco were fearing that families and students might actually benefit without them. This is, according to her, something that would take away the power of their walkout. And she basically said that there's a monopoly on education and it only survives because too many parents feel that they don't have any other alternatives. And so, in this case, you're dealing with these power dynamics. And, look, the homeschool kids, the number of them, it's nearly doubled in the past 6 years. Apparently, there are around 4 million across the country now, students who are being homeschooled. And so it's interesting because that means that the public schools are potentially losing millions. One metric is that the public schools lost as many as 3 million students if you go back to 2019 through 2025.
And so why does Donalds think the union even took this position in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to do with a lot of, what I just sort of mentioned there too, that really, though, the bigger thing, she said that she believes that parents would realize overnight that they have genuine education freedom to educate at home without any fear, without any penalty. And so we saw this during COVID where a lot of parents realized, oh my goodness, there's a lot happening here, right? Like there's a lot happening in the schools I don't like. There's gender ideology, these other things. Once they were home hearing what their kids were learning. And so, if their kids are home learning, they may realize, oh, not only do I not like what's being taught, but maybe this is easier than I thought it was to actually shape my kids in my home.
Yeah. And actually that's even aside from the shenanigans that are being taught at some schools, just that fact of being able to realize, hey, like, I could be the one shaping my kid and spending that time with them, that quality time that you're really only going to get once in your life. And do you want to spend that working the entire time? And again, I say this as someone who has homeschooled for a large part of our kids' upbringing here. And so it's interesting to see, though, these schools' reaction at that they view the parents, that they view them as like a competitor and a threat to their bottom line, instead of partners in educating children across the country or in whatever region you're in, right? Like you should be looking at it, if you're the school system, as we're partners with parents and we'll assist them in any way we can. And if they choose to do it this way or that way, then fine. But I think when school districts and school unions start looking at things, parents as competitors, that's when some problematic views kind of creep in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the reality is this is about serving the kids, right? The union is there to defend teachers, but education is there to serve the kids. And so that is where the focus should be. And at the end of the day, it's unfortunate that there's so much politics in this, honestly, because the kids are the ones that lose out. And of course you want them doing packets at home. Of course you want them doing the work at home. I don't really care if it puts you at a disadvantage. They're there to learn. They're not there to, pay you, essentially. It's not the purpose of the system. Of course you need to have fair pay. And I don't know what the issues are out there. So I'm not trying to diminish what the union's trying to do. I'm just saying the purpose of the system is to educate the kids.
Right. You have to put the kids first. And if these other priorities, which are, like you said, fair pay and all this stuff are, the salary compensation, those are all legitimate issues, but if they come at the expense of the kids, then maybe it's time to rethink that. All right, we're going to go to the main thing now, and Vermont's historic town meeting day, where voters typically decide school budgets and road repairs. But this year, some communities are considering a symbolic measure tied to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Supporters call it a moral stand for quote-unquote justice. Critics warn it unfairly singles out Israel. CBN's Tara Mergener has more on today's main thing.
Town Meeting Day is a cherished civic tradition in the Green Mountain State. Each March, Vermont residents meet face-to-face to vote on local issues, from school budgets to road repairs.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. And this year, some ballots include a question reaching far beyond local government, whether to agree to a pledge aimed at Israel to call themselves an apartheid-free community.
It says, "We affirm our commitment to freedom, justice, and equality for the Palestinian people and all people, and to that end to join others in working to end all support for Israel and the military occupation of Palestine."
While the symbolic resolution is not legally enforceable, it will reportedly be considered in at least 3 towns: Montpelier, Hartford, and Richmond.
Apartheid-free means apartheid-free from occupation, from colonization, from oppression.
As part of a national campaign, the Quaker-affiliated American Friends Service Committee has been active here for years. Supporters canvass dozens of communities, collecting signatures to secure ballot placement so they can draw attention to what they describe as human rights violations by Israel. That's a claim strongly rejected by the Israeli government.
Anyone who says that Israel is an apartheid state has no clue what is the real definition of apartheid.
The resolution encourages economic pressure against Israel, such as the boycott, divestment, and sanction movement. The resolution also seeks to oppose all forms of racism, including anti-Semitism.
You know the river to the sea means the destruction of Israel, right?
Yeah, I do know that.
What we're doing is criticizing the policies and the actions of the state of Israel, not the Jews.
Mark Trankman of Vermont Friends of Israel doesn't believe the measure should be included on this unique day and feels a deepening of divisions and tight-knit communities.
The things that people usually talk about in town meeting day are whether to replace a culvert in a dirt road or buy a new school bus for our kids, town budgets. The meetings have been hijacked by this anti-Israel mob.
Since the brutal October invasion, anti-Semitic incidents have risen nationwide.
The number of anti-Semitic incidents in the region has never been higher.
The Anti-Defamation League reports more than 600 incidents across New England in 2024, including in Vermont. Vermont law enforcement investigated threatening letters sent to synagogues in 2025, and anti-Semitic graffiti has also been reported in recent years. Authorities see no evidence linking those incidents directly to local pledge campaigns. Still, Jewish resident Denise Gebro, a personal trainer in Proctorsville, says she is afraid.
I've received hate mail, calling me horrible names, things that aren't true. I've had people on my Facebook page for work go through my friend list and contact a bunch of people that are my clients. Every synagogue's been hit with some sort of graffiti.
Last spring, voters in several Vermont towns approved non-binding apartheid-free pledges. Supporters say this marks the first time municipalities in the country have adopted a pledge of this kind through a public vote.
It really showed the success of this campaign and the success of the organizers and activists in Vermont in proving that Palestine is a local issue.
Thetford became the first town to vote on and approve the pledge. Petitioners argued a public vote was a moral issue and that it reflected community values about human rights.
The Thetford Select Board was concerned that if we didn't have it on the ballot, that it would come up in other business, and folks who were unaware of this topic coming up would feel that they had been denied an opportunity to weigh in.
We won very conservative towns, and we won liberal towns.
The campaign has spread nationwide and internationally, with broad support from faith communities, businesses, and student groups. Critics are concerned about broader social consequences.
We are heading towards a division of America that we have not seen literally since pre-civil rights era, and going all the way back to the Jim Crow era and into the pre-Civil War era. And what they're doing is dividing Jews off from the rest of the population. And the historical precedent for this is not pretty.
Stop funding Israeli apartheid and genocide.
In Burlington, the city council, not petitioners, decides what goes on the ballot. And council members have repeatedly rejected the question, saying it could raise tension and does not belong in local government. Meanwhile, in Brattleboro, where voters approved the pledge last year, this restaurant owner says community divisions have deepened.
The amount of hate that we as a business receive is endless. It's on social media. You get it in person. I have my daughter goes to the school. We have doing the salute and saying Heil Hitler in front of her. We getting people telling me, get the F out of here.
More Democrat voters per capita than any other state in the country. So it seems like a good breeding ground or a test case, a proof of concept for the people that want to take this movement nationwide.
Now, some are wondering whether the town meeting day tradition could play a role in how international issues play out in local communities, and whether similar debates spread far beyond the state. In Brattleboro, Vermont, Tara Mergener, CBN News.
All right, appreciate that report there. And that's going to leave us with time on the podcast today for one last thing.
Colossians 4:2, continue steadfastly in prayer, being watchful in it with thanksgiving. And so just praying without ceasing, being watchful with thanksgiving. These are things that we're called to do, and we're called to pray and not just take it lightly, but pray, with depth and trueness and realness.
Yeah, amen. And being thankful, which sometimes is hard to do. We're always kind of just concerned, get us through the next crisis, get us through the next crisis. Be thankful in all things, in all circumstances, and being steadfast in that prayer. So good spot to leave it. As always, get on over to cbnnews.com, faithwire.com for more news from a Christian perspective. God bless. See you back here tomorrow.